Did you guys hear that Oregon is considering legalizing psilocybin?
Yeah, I heard that.
Gathering the signatures.
Portland's going to be the most annoying place on earth.
Fucking hell.
Actually, maybe not. Maybe this will...
Everybody's going to need somebody to pump their fucking gas for them.
Well, I've been watching Narcos, Mexico, the new Narcos, and it's a really good show. But it's just constantly, like every episode, I'm just reminded of how fucking stupid the drug war has been. Like the biggest waste of resources America's ever had, other than some of the wars they've been in.
Well, and lives.
Thousands of people. Like the amount of people that died, and like innocent people that were just killed as crossfire as part of this drug war to keep people from smoking a plant.
Forget who it is. I think it's George Carlin. One of those people says, drugs can really mess up your life. So if you do drugs, we'll put you in jail and mess up your life.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also just so fruitless. Like I just couldn't wrap my head around what the point of the show was. I mean, like I know the show, they were telling the story, but in terms of how it played out in real life, I was like trying to imagine aliens, watching this happen and just them scratching their heads being like, what the fuck are they doing? What's going on? But you see,
this is where maybe it is a little conspiratorial, because why is such a relatively harmless thing? Let's take marijuana just to separate it out from like things that obviously are a little more difficult to discuss. Like you can't as easily argue that we should just have everyone doing meth, but marijuana has its downsides. Like sugar has its downsides. Everything has its downsides in life. So why is it that it's been so banned and such a concern placed on it by the government? Is it because is there a psychological aspect to it? I think
their conspiracy theories are true about a lot of it, that there was a lot of resistance against hemp and cannabis in the States because of because of lumber industries and stuff like that, because hemp is extremely practical and efficient for
I know
paper and all that stuff. I think that was it, but
origins.
Even that, I can't wrap my head around how short-sighted it was, because now it's legal. It's going to become illegal across the country, and corporations are going to make billions of dollars. Why weren't they early on in that?
But that's what I'm asking. I know the origins of why it was illegal and the paper and all that sort of thing. What I'm saying is, eventually now it's still being fought against. Now I guess maybe it's alcohol companies that are fighting it or something. But is there something more inherent in what it does to the psychology of the masses that the kind of big power structures are scared of? Like,
I see what you're saying.
Like obviously there's real practical reasons that people oppose it. Like if you own a pain medication drug company, and now you have this natural thing that can be easily distributed, relatively safe for minor level pain management, then of course you're going to be opposed to it. But so those are all the kind of obvious ones. But
maybe there's all those conspiracies. I mean, the prison thing is definitely keeping a huge population in prison. There's tons of motivations for that, bad motivations for that, but maybe it's just short-sightedness, because the temperance movement, if you were around when America was a bunch of alcoholics, which they were, people were going out of their mind drinking, especially when they started distilling liquor, and you didn't think something through, you would have thought, oh, temperance, let's just ban alcohol, because the evidence that this shit is bad is pretty obvious.
Right.
I think part of it's just short-sightedness. You can't most drugs have serious downsides, and if you're somebody who's interested in like social policy and you just haven't thought 3 steps ahead when it doesn't prevent anybody getting the drugs anyway, then you'll be like, yeah, let's just make it illegal, and then that momentum can continue forever.
Yeah, you're asking if there's like some conspiracy in terms of keeping people from opening up their consciousness in terms of taking...
Well, yeah, particularly with...
like weed and mushrooms and things like that. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. There are supposed like accounts of people who were in MK Ultra experiments and stuff like that that have talked about not being allowed to use marijuana, or that they were told that they didn't want people to use marijuana because it was had such an effect on opening up people's minds to certain states and to certain ideas, that they didn't want the masses to be exposed to it. But I don't know if you'll ever be able to prove any of that.
Yeah, no, there's no way to prove it or anything. It's just interesting that it's been so opposed with it. certain of these drugs having so little negative effect.
I don't. Even if that was the case, if that was a conspiracy, I think they were wrong because if you're in weed legal states these days, there's no evidence that it opens up your average person's mind. It turns a lot of people into fucking morons. Denver was the worst, I thought. Just it's because it's a lot of tourists flying in, like, oh, let's go get weed, and then you just got annoying people that are doing it for a novelty experience.
As a result of the people smoking weed. I think that's as a result of it being taboo for 100 years.
No, I think it's as a result of people in general that the propensity to have a mind-opening experience and read it as such is actually not a very common thing. You know, I don't think a lot of people actually are inclined toward that experience. It's quite scary for a lot of people.
No, but supposedly the studies that they've been doing on psilocybin and ayahuasca of the people who have had those experiences, the long-lasting effects of fears and anxieties and things like that are being proven that they lost a long time after they've taken that drug.
I mean, I think Jesse's saying, you're saying dumb people are dumb people. And people that are not inclined to have an enlightening moment.
The masses are more inclined to numb their senses and numb their consciousness than to try to open it up, which I believe is true. But I think it's a little difficult to tell because marijuana and stuff has just become legal, and for 100 years people have just been thinking it's taboo, and now it is. It's tourists just wanting to go get as high as they can. Where if there wasn't the stigma of smoking weed, that it maybe people would have a different approach to it, or they wouldn't think about it in the same way.
Yeah, I think with the psilocybin stats, that's going to be hard to tell because I think most people who would be in that sample group, are not your average person. They're either in some sort of trial, for psychiatric stuff or addiction stuff, or there's pre-selection in who's going to be part of that sample group. If you were able to do a widespread, test on psychedelic mushrooms, I don't know that the results would be the same as they seem to be showing right now.
Yeah, I mean that's
because there's a fuckload of kids and high school and college kids who all talk about their mushroom experiences, and I don't see a change in them for the better.
Well, yeah, no, but even that, I don't know if you could make that judgment. I think the way of discussing it and approaching it needs to be opened up, and that's why it needs to become legal, so that it's not so they can do legitimate studies and they can talk about it in a normal, a mature way. Because I'm just looking here, the ayahuasca, there's been a long-term study now over 5 years of ayahuasca with people with depression, and after 5 to 7 years of follow-up, those patients that took it have a very low recidivism, what's the word for remission rate, and also talk about it as one of the most important experiences of their lives.